ध्यान yoga. So last time discussed, but we had main principles and this is about the process of act. To remember, uh, leaving away the role for mind goes back and so the process then the bit of doing mention that say if you are in part but state of mind in quite all ups and downs may to come all able to the principal here. Then uh, if I go for the as so here there are certain other given like the first one tells that should not be too much eat is on hunger. If we eat too much, we become allergic. Eat mind is not and not much. So the be to basically control the milk the time. So the things are not so and we should do much. We should eat the first required the hunger and also nutrition. By the sharpness means much. Yeah, that one too much. So we should not harmful you are you say we activities means so positive in and keep it so we have balanced sleep balance balance is our work our then we live the possibility of achieving of life in terms of variation is our whether it is sleep we will disturb our disturbed body and mind will be disturbed and then that is we have the mind will have you know all things should balance for example the basically long of uh, more and he will not find this agitated he will have fear that to do so should be in a drastic way, positive what it means. And we have all these things, it is for achieve finality. So also needed. You meditation 15 minutes an hour, that's okay. But all throughout the day, in all other activities also, sleep, food, work, recreation, also we need to have a balance. So recreation also doesn't mean that all the time we are wasting in watching some television show or unnecessary chatting, gossiping. So recreation also means it can be made positive. Can be made balanced and productive. Choosing the right kind of recreation, choosing a positive recreation. So, for example, if we have a choice of watching a movie, if we choose a movie which is having too many negative things and hardly any positive message, unnecessary items being shown, uh, vulgar things being shown, so that is going to have negative effect on us. So rather than that, if we choose right kind of movies, right kind of shows where we learn something positive, uh, we basically add some more values to our life. Those kind of entertainment sources will be good for us. So again, there has to be a balance with respect to entertainment, also balance with respect to the recreation also. The recreation vihar can be done in many other ways also. Somebody maybe having some creative skill, good at music, good at art, good at maybe cooking. So there are many ways in which person can be engaged in recreation. So yukta ahar viharasya. Vihar means not only uh, Bihar literally means, of course, traveling or basically the act of going out. But here, the contextual meaning is Bihar means recreation. Yukta ahara viharasya, yukta chestasya karmasu. So these three, four things are mentioned, which are, of course, the part of our daily life. Either we are working, or we are having some recreation, or we are sleeping, we are eating. So all these things should also be balanced. That's what it is mentioned. This is also important. Next, if we look at the next two words, if you see, this is again a very important analogy given over here. The last verse, if you see directly, yatha deepo nivatastho. Nivatastho means a place where there is no wind. Nivat, vat means wind. Nivat means place where there is no wind, windless place. That is nivat, nivatastho. So yatha deepo nivatastho means just like a lamp or a diya, deepak, when it is situated in a windless place, nivatastho, na ingate, nengate sopama smritaha. Nengate means, ingate means disturbed, means, just like a dancing flame. Na ingate means which is not disturbed, very stable. So upama smritaha, sa, so upama. Upama means so that comparison, that analogy. Smrita means remembering. So first line says, just like uh, uh, the flame of a lamp does not get disturbed in a windless place. Remembering this analogy, Sopama Smrita, remembering this analogy, Yogino Yatachittasya Yunjato Yogam Atmanaha. So the yogi, remembering this particular analogy, should steady his mind, steady his thought process, and bring it under control. So just like the flame of the lamp does not get disturbed in the windless place, it is steady. We should also try to keep our mind, thoughts, etc. steady, under control. So this is also very good analogy, very good example to remember. Going forward, this particular verse, if you see, it says the third one that once you achieve that stability of mind, once you achieve that yoga, once you are established in equanimity, once you have achieved the control over your mind and thoughts, then it is a very peaceful and joyful state. Means we are always peaceful because our nature is to be joyful. The atma or the self nature is joyful. So if we are detached from this matter means the body is also matter, and the subtle aspect of the body, which is mind, thought, ego, emotion, etc. They are also matter. They are also classified as matter in the Upanishadic principle, Vedic principle. So if we are detaching ourselves from this matter, that means we are becoming controller of the matter, detached from the matter. That means the body mind complex. We are becoming its observer, not getting engrossed in it, not getting too influenced by it, but becoming its monitor, its observer, its controller. Then in that state, we are naturally joyful. We are not perturbed by external factors. And it is also said that uh, it is so joyful that once we achieve that status, uh, we feel that that is the highest source of happiness. Means there is nothing better than that. Being there is the best thing. After that, if you go down further, if you clearly see that okay, means we should not leave that state. We should always remain in that state. That's what is mentioned here. Yasmin sthito na dukkhena means gurana api vichalyate. Yasmin sthito means when situated in that state, dukhena gurana api vichalyate. Gurana means very severe, very grave. So even when there is grave problem, very serious problems, difficulties, sorrow, even in those conditions also, we will not be disturbed or agitated. That is what is being mentioned. So once you achieve that much control, then whatever happens around you because of external factors, whatever upheavals happen, we will be able to easily tolerate that and handle that with basically full control. We will not be too agitated. We will keep our balance. That word is mentioned over here. So now let us go towards. So we have seen some examples, some verses where there was mentioned of the concept of Brahman or Ishwar. So, for example, in this particular slide, we had looked at the third verse where it is written, Upaiti Shanta Rajasam Brahma Bhutam Akalmasham. That means we are able to pacify our rajas. We are able to pacify the passions in the mind, and then we attain the state of Brahma Bhuta. That means we become associated with Brahma. Brahma is defined as the supreme consciousness or Ishwar. So again, there are nuances like what is Brahma, what is Ishwar, but definitely there is a mention of a higher consciousness with which we should associate. That is Brahma over here. So this word is coming again and again. Brahma, Ishwar, Paramatma. So this comes again and again. So that's why just to have at least a notional understanding, it's good to have a discussion. That's why I'm going to go into this. We had also seen this verse, the fourth verse over here, Brahmachari Vrate Siddha. So what is this Brahmachari? That is defined as the way of staying associated with Brahma, or at least trying to go or walk the path of Brahman. So that is Brahmachari. Likewise, I think there are many other verses all throughout. There are verses where ultimately we will have combination of both the aspects. There will be some aspects related to the Brahman, Paramatma, Ishwar also mentioned. Like if you remember, we have avoided discussion on this particular verse. If you remember, this Yantra Rudhani Maya. So if you remember this particular verse that we had taken in the very beginning, Ishvara Sarva Bhutana Hriddeshe Arjuna Tishtati. So here, this is the body is compared to a machine, and the self or the Atman is the driver of that machine, and the supreme person, the Ishwar, is also situated in the uh, machine as the supreme energy or the source of the energy, source of the power, source of capability, and he is enabling the Atma or the self to drive the machine. So the source of life or source of all the energies, source of all the capabilities, source of all the power, that lies with the supreme self or the Ishwar, who enables the individual self or the Atma to act. So this is mentioned all throughout, and we will have many verses even in Karma Yoga. When we discuss some of the verses, there is mention of Paramatma or Brahma doing our work dedicated to Brahma. So we need to understand what is this Brahma. And again, somebody who is completely atheist or wants to basically he is not having so much faith, he wants to completely avoid the faith factor. So for them also, the process is given that okay, means if you want to really realize yourself or want to get a feel of what is being talked about, there is a process. You follow the process and you will be able to realize also. So let us try to understand, and definitely it is not a topic where we can cover everything in one session. And but still, very objectively, I will try to put the statements forward. Whatever statements are given, I will just try to put those statements. So before I go forward, just confirming that I'm still connected. Anybody can confirm that audio, video clear? Yes. All right. Uh, so now, so here in the Vedanta, there is a concept of Ishwar, Jiva, and Prakriti. So that is also there in the Gita, because Gita is ultimately a summary of Vedanta. It is basically the essence of Vedanta or essence of Upanishad. So it also basically deals with these three aspects. The Ishwar is the supreme person or supreme consciousness, who is the creator. From him, the creation comes, and he basically pervades the entire creation as well. So he is omnipresent through his energies. He is present all throughout. He's all powerful. He is basically beyond time. So the time is also seen as his creation. So the effect, he is basically beyond the effect of time also. So the jiva, whereas jiva are limited consciousness. So Ishwar is supreme consciousness. He is conscious and aware of everything, the entire creation. Jeev is also a conscious being, but that Jeev is a limited conscious being. He is conscious of only his basically uh, his body or his surrounding. So he is also conscious. He is having also the quality of consciousness or chetana, but it is a limited consciousness. And uh, then there is this Prakriti. So this Ishwar and Jeev, they are basically both timeless. They are always existing. Ishwar is never born, is never he never dies. So they are eternal. This Jivatma also, if you remember the opening verses of the Gita, it says that uh, there was never a time where these kings did not exist, or I did not exist, or you did not exist. So Krishna says this to Arjun. So he's saying that all these jivas, all these atmas or the self, they always existed and they will always exist. So even if the present body are finished, they will exist in some form or the other. So these individual self or the jivas will always exist. So this Ishwar and Jiva both are always there. And then there is this Prakriti. This Prakriti is the material nature, all the matter, all the material nature that is there, that is regarded as the Prakriti. And this Jiva, they are basically uh, injected into the Prakriti. That means these Jiva are operating within the Prakriti and trying to basically enjoy the Prakriti or the different facilities provided by the Prakriti. So that is the process, that is the principle that is given over here. That these jivas, they basically attach themselves to the prakriti. Now this prakriti is material energy, which is basically always changing its form. The prakriti, all the energy in the prakriti, they are changing their form all the time. If the jiva is getting into, basically he is getting a body, the atma is acquiring a body that is also changing. Mind, consciousness, the mind, emotion, etc., they are also energies. They are also regarded as the subtle aspects of the body, so they are also changing. And in the prakriti also, all the things, other external bodies, other factors, situations, people, objects, animals, even the natural things like mountains, river, soil, everything keeps changing. Prakriti's nature is change. They always keep changing. uh, Whereas the jiva is trying to extract some joy from the prakriti. He's always trying to enjoy the prakriti through various ways. So either he's trying to enjoy through his body, or he's trying to enjoy through the subtle faculties like mind, ego, emotion, etc. That is the relationship. So Ishwar has created the prakriti. Jiva, they are trapped in the prakriti. They are basically somehow not able to realize, they are not able to relate to the Ishwar who is the creator. and they are trapped in the Prakriti. So as long as they are basically not realizing that this this trap in the Prakriti, that is basically keeping us in the cycle of birth and death, we will not be able to uh, find an eternal life or something like passing this temporary life of uh, pain, pleasure, life, death, etc. So again, going deeper into this is going to be very time taking, and there are a lot of philosophical things that we'll need to discuss. So I'm just trying to give you an overview that what is the nature of Ishwar. He is the creator, he is a supreme person, he is a supreme controller, and he has created the Prakriti, material nature. The Jivas are in this material nature, they're trying to basically enjoy or derive pleasure in many different forms. Though in every living being, every jiva, he tries to survive, and along with survival, it is also trying to enjoy in many different ways, enjoying in different ways like taking food or whatever be the process. So some things are forced by nature. Beyond that, of course, the jiva also tries to acquire pleasure in different ways. That is what is mentioned. So this concept of Ishwar or divine or God does not come in the Gita till the fourth chapter. So till first chapter, second chapter, third chapter, Krishna doesn't mention anything about Ishwar. So he just keeps on talking about karma and life and death and rebirth, atma, self-control, all those things. Uh, when this fourth chapter starts, then basically uh, he mentions to Arjun that something. Means I had given the same knowledge to uh, the Surya Devta, and then he gave it to somebody else. He gave it to Manu, and then from Manu it came to human beings. So he tells that I had given this knowledge, this yoga, this concept of yoga shastra or the Upanishadic knowledge, this Vedanta. So I had given this knowledge in the beginning of the creation itself. So the concept in the Vedanta is that the creator uh, is basically all knowing, and he is delivering that knowledge of life, the overall process and the gyan that is required uh, in the very beginning. But he also says that that knowledge gets disturbed or basically gets lost, and therefore I am giving it again. So the process is that okay, means this good knowledge about life and trying to understand the principle of yoga, trying to be in a higher consciousness and act in a higher consciousness, working in a higher consciousness and doing good work in the world. That process has been given in the beginning. It's not something that I'm reinventing. I have already given, and I have given. So Krishna is speaking as the divine, as the supreme person. So he's now assuming the role. Means he is now uh, you know wearing his hat of being the supreme person, and then talking to Arjuna. So then Arjuna asks that means how is it possible? Means you were born recently, means close to me, and now you are saying that you had given this knowledge to Sun God or Surya Devta, and from there it started. So how is it possible? So he's asking this simple question. Means you're talking about giving this knowledge to Surya. Surya is much older than you, and I don't even know much about him. So, and you are saying that you have given this knowledge to him, and from there Surya Vansh got that knowledge, and from there it descended to human beings and all. So how is that possible? So after that, the discussion on divine begins. So I'm just again putting this very, very objectively, some of the points that are given without going into detail. That okay, what is the meaning of Surya Devta and what is the meaning of giving knowledge to Surya? So those things again, it requires a lot of discussion, and I'm skipping those things right now. Uh, so so the main question that Arjuna asked that okay, means, since you are my contemporary, how can you give this knowledge to somebody who is existing since ages? So then, in answer of that, Krishna says these two verses, and I'm sorry that I have not been able to put the translation. So I was trying to gather all the verses where the concept of God is given, at least the major concepts, and I did not really get the time to write the translation over here. So I'm just discussing and telling you the meaning. So here again, I'm telling you just the meaning without going into word by word translation, just to be faster. So here he says that Arjuna, means you have spent several lifetimes. This is not just single life. You have spent a lot of lifetimes, life after life after life. So you have undergone many births and death. So you have taken many births, and so have I. I have also taken many births. So the God also takes avatar, right? So in the Vedanta or in our in Sanatan Dharma, there is a principle of incarnation. So he says that even I have taken birth. Although I am unborn and I am the eternal supreme being, I have also taken birth, and you have taken many births. And then he says, Tani ham Veda Sarvani, means Tani, your, Aham, I, Veda Sarvani, means I know all of yours, means I know all your birth, all your history, A to Z. Natam Veta Parantapa, you don't know. So he's here, the limitation of the Jiva is being described. That whatever the numerous lifetimes the jiva spends in one body to another body, he doesn't remember anything. He just remember the present life. Previous lives are not known to him. That memory is deleted or at least suppressed very deeply. And the divine, the supreme person who is in charge, who is all powerful, all knowing, he has the entire history. I mean, he knows everything, every person, every individual, their whole history. So you can imagine the data, because the data is huge, and he is knowledgeable. He knows everything. So that's what he's saying. Tani ham Veda Sarvani. I know everything that you have done A to Z, from one life to another life, millions of life, whatever. But you don't know. So he is distinguishing what is the power and capability of the Ishwar and what is the limitation of a Jiva. Jiva is limited. He is limited in his capability and the level of consciousness, whereas the divine is all knowing. So then the next verse says, then he elaborates further upon his own nature. He says, Ajopi Sannavyay Atma. Means Ajopi means Ajah, Ajah Api. Ajah means one who is not born. Ajah. Ajah means not born. Ja means one who has taken birth or janama. Aja means who has no janama, a janama. Ajopi san avyay atma. Avyay means one who is never degraded or who never dies. Avyay. Avyay means one who is dying. We are dying every moment, right? Our body gets old, gets disease, we get weaker, and finally we die. But God is not like that. He is always there. He is always present. He doesn't decay. He doesn't die. So he is avyay. So he's describing the nature of the divine. So ajopi san avyay atma. I am not born. I am always existing. And avyay atma. I never die. Bhutanam Ishvaropi san. Bhutanam means all the living beings. Ishvar means controller. Ishvar Sanskrit exact translation is Ishvar means controller or the proprietor, owner. So I am the owner, proprietor, enabler, energizer of all the jivas. Bhutanam Ishvaropi san. So he's describing the qualities. He's defining what is God. And then the next line says, Prakritim swam avishtabhyah. Prakriti means in this nature, in this material nature. Swam means my. This material nature is my creation. It's not somebody else's creation. I have created it. It is my property, my creation. So I sometimes enter into this prakriti, my own prakriti, sambhavami atma mayaya, and so I appear, I take incarnation through my own maya or through my own yogic maya or yogic process. So although I am never born, but you are seeing me as an individual being born in Mathura. So as an individual, you have seen my life. Means I have been born in Mathura, and then I was raised in Vrindavan. Then I became a king, and now I am in your. I am a king in your. What do you call that? You have this thing, right? How can I miss that? So, so right now he is a king and he is in Kurukshetra and he has, gone through a phase, right? So, uh, but despite all that, what he's saying is that Prakritim Swam Avishtabhya means I choose to basically be incarnated. So you are born in your karma chakra, and because of that you are taking many lives and birth. But I have the freedom. I choose to incarnate whenever there is a requirement. So Prakritim Swam Avishtabhya. I enter my nature, and taking the energies of my nature, I incarnate myself through my own energies or through my own Maya. Sambhavami Atma Mayaya. Next, if you see, so he's telling him the distinction. So he has defined, first of all, very briefly, he has defined what is God, what is he. So he's saying that I am not born, I am always existing, I never decay, I never die, and I am the controller, I am the owner, I am the Ishwar of all living beings. Then let's see. Now these verses are known to almost everyone. All of us might have heard about this, and Mahabharat, the title song is also there. So these two verses, he is further saying, he's telling about his own birth. So Arjuna asked that, okay, you are born and you are my contemporary. How are you telling that you have given this knowledge in such a long past? So there he is answering that. Now he says, यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानम् अधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम् परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे. So this is the principle of incarnation, that the divine is capable of incarnating himself and coming as as an individual in this world wherever there is a need. So that need may be complex, that need may be situation dependent. Let us not debate about that. But wherever there is a need, that need is that dharmasya glani means whatever is the righteousness, whatever is the right principle, the dharma that is getting destroyed. There is a calamity. Then I reincarnate to re-establish the righteous principles. Abhyuthanam adharmasya ratmanam srijamiham. And then paritranaya sadhunam is protecting the righteous ones, those who are on the side of the dharma, and vinashaya the dushkritam, those who are the evildoers, I destroy them, or for their destruction I incarnate. That is what is mentioned. And then the third line says, Janma karma cha me divyam. That means my birth and activities are divine. They are not like common people. So he's distinguishing the role of Ishwar from the common jivas. So he's saying that don't try to question, don't try to debate too much. You will not understand. My activities, my birth and death are divine, and they are basically beyond the common people's activity, common man's activity. So in the fourth chapter, basically he starts describing. He just starts mentioning about God, about his status as God and properties of God. What are the qualities of God? So that's what we are trying to see objectively. What are the facts? What are the statements given? Even in the fifth chapter, I have skipped one verse. Uh, in the fifth chapter, also towards the end, in the fifth chapter, throughout, he's talking about the karma yoga principle, and why karma yoga is important, why having the right knowledge is important. All throughout, he has talked about that. And in the last, again, he has one more verse which talks about his status as a divine, as the God, and that I have missed. So there also he stresses that I am the. He stresses the same thing. He says that I am the owner and the proprietor of this world, and those who understand my nature or the God's nature as the supreme proprietor or the controller, they find peace. So if we see that, okay, there is a creator and there is a regulation, so then we have some comfort that, okay, there is a regulator sitting somewhere. And right now, again, it's difficult to debate and understand all the details, but he says that if you just understand and accept, fifth chapter last verse, he says that if you just accept and understand that I am, there is a supreme person who is in charge and controller of this entire creation, and who is basically Suhridam Sarvabhutanam. Suhrida Sarvabhutanam means he is well-wisher of all the living entities. He is controller, but he is benevolent. He is well-wisher. He is having good intentions, or he is the real, I would say, a well-wisher of every living entity. Once, if you believe in that, then you have some source of uh, basically uh, basically you are more confident and you can attain peace. You in under all the ups and downs, you can at least have some faith that there is a person sitting over there who is most powerful and he is my well wisher. So that's what he says in fifth chapter, in the last verse. That okay means you don't understand me and you cannot understand me. I am limitless. I'm beyond time, and I'm all powerful. But at least try to have some faith that uh, there is the supreme person who is all powerful and who is the well wisher of all living beings. And if you have faith in that supreme person, or faith in me, basically he is the supreme person, if you have faith in me in that way, you will be finding peace in an easier way. If you do not have that faith, then it is more difficult to get peace and relief. So he's just giving an basically tool. Means you may not understand, you may not realize, you may not feel, you may not be able to basically practically understand me, but at least have faith, and that faith will help you in achieving peace. That faith will help you in achieving self control. That's what it says in the fifth chapter, last verse. And then here in the sixth chapter, again, there are some properties given. So he says in the sixth chapter, we have already seen a lot of verses like about the yoga process, dhyana process. So he says that you have to control the mind and bring the mind under self control, meditate, meditation technique is given. So we have seen what is there in the sixth chapter. This is also taken from the sixth chapter towards the end. So towards the end part, again the supremacy of God is being emphasized. He says, Yo mam pashyati sarvatra, sarvam cha mai pashyati. So the one who sees me everywhere, one who knows that I am present everywhere, I am omnipresent, I am seeing all the activities, I am seeing every thought process. There is a supreme person who is watchful, who is basically omnipresent. He sees everything, our thoughts, our words, our actions, everything has its own reaction. So this karma process is also inbuilt. Even every thought has its own reaction. If we think in the wrong way, we will get a reaction. We will maybe act in the wrong way and we will get the reaction of that. So every process I am observing, I am omnipresent. So yo mam pashyati sarvatra, sarvam cha mai pashyati. Sarvam cha mai pashyati means sees everything in me, or realizes and understands that everything rests in me. Or basically, I am the energizer, I am the life giver. My energies operate the entire world. It's my creation, it's my nature. It is not running randomly, independently. So one who understands that I am present everywhere and all the objects are operating within my energies, then he can attain peace. Then the next line says, tasyaham na pranashyami sacha me na pranashyati. So this means that that person uh, is never lost, means he never gets disturbed and agitated because he has faith in the supreme person. So there is a faith component is being discussed that even if you don't understand, even if you don't realize me, at least have faith. That is being promoted. Next is uh, next two verses are also related to this concept, and let me I will for the time being I will skip it. Here again, if you see, this is the last verse of the sixth chapter. So here Krishna is encouraging Arjun to become a yogi. So he says, Tapasvi dhyo dhigo yogi. So one who does tapasya, a lot of tapasya, is tapasvi. So he says that a yogi who is always under self control, who is at the level of Atman, who is at the level of self, and who has raised himself above the turbulence of body and mind, who is acting like a yogi, not only during meditation, but in his daily activities, he is acting like a yogi. He is not acting for the pleasure of body and mind. He is acting for the overall good. He is acting to execute his right duties. That is a yogi. So he says that yogi is better than tapasvi. Jnani bhyopi matodhikaha. He is also better than Jnani. Jnani means one who is acquiring knowledge by reading Shastra, by reading Vedanta, by his teacher. So you may acquire knowledge, that is okay, but ultimately you have to put it to practice, right? You have to use that knowledge. So Jnani doesn't matter, means ultimately you have to become a yogi, then only your Gyan is utilized. So that's why he's saying Jnani Bhyopi Matodhikaha. He is also superior to a Jnani who has acquired a lot of Jnana. Then the next line says Karmi Bhya Chadhiko Yogi. So one who is acting, who is working as a yogi, means Karma Yoga. So although you may be doing good work, but if you're not situated in yoga, you are no good. So first you establish yourself in yoga, then work. Therefore, he says that karmi bhya chadhiko yogi. A worker means one who is just working for his own gratification. Yogi is much superior to him. Therefore, tasmad yogi bhava. Tasmad. Therefore, you should become a yogi. Strive to become a yogi, O Arjuna. That's what this verse says. And then next line, he says, yogi nam api sarvesham. Means among all the yogis, madgatenantar atmana means madgatenantar means under the mind is surrendered to me or focused on me and being aware of me, conscious of me. Madgatenantar. Mad means might, under me. And Shraddhavan Bhajate Yoma means one who basically uh, understands that all this world is created by me and he fixes his mind on me. That means he understands that I am the origin and always revering me. He is basically having my remembrance. He's focusing on me. So that way he can basically attain peace, and at the same time, uh, that person is the highest yogi. So unless you are focusing on the super self or the supreme person, you are not the highest yogi. So there is some encouragement given, some incentive given. There is some devotion coming over here. Principles of devotion start from here. That you should understand what is the power, what is the status, what is the capability, what is the reality of the supreme person. And if you know that, then automatically you will have that kind of devotion. You will automatically get engaged or basically get associated or try to approach that person. For example, if we have prime minister sitting next door, right? So he is visiting our neighborhood. So if we know that okay, for some days the prime minister is sitting over there, means he's on a leave and he's sitting basically just next to my house, and we know that he's so powerful. And if I get to talk to him, get to discuss my problems with him, if I share my difficulties with him, in no min, with no difficulty he can solve all that. Means if he gives an order to the DM, he will do everything for me. So definitely you will try to meet him, right? So for example, there are in my state the chief minister does a sabha, means they call it Janta Darbar. So there everybody, all the people, farmer from all around, they are keen to meet him. Why? Because they understand that he is all powerful. He is the most powerful person in the state. So they come and discuss their problem from every area. Likewise, the district magistrates, they are most powerful people in their district. They have all the administrative power. So he calls his own darbar. So people in the district, if they have problem, if they have faced injustice, they have faced corruption, they are facing some difficulty in their respective areas. So they come to the DM office and they talk to him. So because he is the most powerful person in the district. So if there is some difficulty coming, people approach him. So therefore, he says, Krishna says that if you know that I am the supreme person and you are operating because of my energies, your life is because of my energy, your body, mind, whatever you are using as a tool, that is all made of my energies. I have given it to you, and I am also associated with you. I am always observing you. I am with you. I am not away. So then if we know his powers and if we know his capabilities, definitely there should be a desire to associate with that person because he can solve everything. He is a supreme, person, all capable. So, definitely there should be some desire, some intention to know him and approach him. That's what he's saying. That if you become a yogi, the real yogi, the best yogi is one who has faith in the supreme person, and that way you can basically attain peace, confidence, and the equanimity much better because you are not alone. You get a feeling that you are not alone, left alone in some jungle. You are having somebody above you. You are having a supreme person above you on whom you can rely. So that gives us some additional comfort, some mental peace. Practically, also speaking, whether we understand it or not, this practical aspect gives us some peace, isn't it? So that is the practical aspect being mentioned over here. Then going forward, Here, this particular verse says, Manusyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhaye. That is Manusyanam sahasreshu. Manusya, among the humans, among thousands of humans, sahasreshu, sahasra means thousand. Among thousands of people, kaschit means seldom, very few. Kaschit yatati. Yatati means tries or endeavors. Siddhaye. Siddhaye means achieving perfection or achieving yoga, achieving control, becoming a yogi, becoming disciplined, becoming a karma yogi. That is Siddhaye. So among thousands of people, very few will try to become a yogi. Very few will try to implement this principle. Even those who are knowledgeable, even those who attain the gyan of yoga, understand what is right, what is wrong, very few will actually try to become a yogi. That's what he's saying. And yatatam api siddhanam. Yatatam means those even who are trying. Yatatam means those who are trying or to become a yogi or becoming perfect, becoming, leading a life of equanimity. Those who are trying to achieve this process of yoga. Among thousands of them also, very few will understand me. Kaschit, kaschin mam vetti tattvataha. Very few can understand me. It is not easy to understand me. So he's discouraging some speculation over here. Don't try to speculate from your mind, your thought. You can't understand me. That is the principle given. You can say that it is saying that there is a faith component. We can't, with our own mind and thought process, we can't understand the supreme person who is the creator of this entire thing. Right? That's what is being mentioned. And then he's defining again. So the next verse is giving another definition. Matta parataram nanyat. Matta means me. Parataram means beyond. So he says that matta parataram na anyat. Na anyat means nothing else. Kaschit asti dhananjaya. There is nothing superior to me. I am the supreme. Means there is no energy, no power beyond me. I am the most powerful. Mai sarvam idam protam sutre mani gana iva. Mai sarvam means by me, this entire world. Sarvam idam protam. Protam means penetrated. I am present everywhere. Sutre manigana iva. Just like the pearls are resting on a string. When you have a necklace, the pearls are resting on a string. Sutre. Sutra means string. Manigana means gems or pearls. So when you have a necklace made of gems or pearls, you may not be able to see the binding string which is running inside. It is a resting place. It is only causing the. It is only maintaining all these gems in their position. That is the binding force. Without that binding force, this necklace will not rest. It will all be scattered. So just like that, invisible string is the resting place of all these gems and forming this necklace. I am the source of, I am the reason behind this creation. I am the fundamental principle behind this creation. Through my energies, through my power, through my capabilities, this entire creation is working. And just like you can't see that thread, you can't see me, you can't, understand me. I'm not perceptible to you, but I am there. I am the binding force. I am the reason behind this creation and its activities. That is a very beautiful analogy that is given over here. Uh, then there are, some more verses which also uh, basically give some weight to the faith component and tell us that we can't approach a supreme person through our own mind. So that's what he's saying in this two verses. He says that Naham Prakasha Sarvasya. That Prakasha means I am not basically disclosed to everyone. I am not perceptible to everyone. Naham Prakasha Sarvasya. Yoga Maya Samavritaha. Yoga Maya means there is a uh, energy, there is a illusory energy or Maya. I am surrounded by that. People cannot see me. Means the jivas cannot basically feel my presence. They can't really grasp my presence. They can't grasp me. They can't understand me. They can't visualize me so easily. I am covered by my energies. I can't be felt so easily. Mudho yam na vijanati loko mam ajamavyayam. Means in this world, those the jivas who are mudha. Mudha means uh, their perception is clouded. Perception is dull. that is in the crude sense, mudha means murk, mudha means foolish. But here the contextual meaning is mudha means one who has covered perception. Perception is limited. So with limited perception in this world, people cannot understand me. Loko na bhi janati, mam ajam avyayam. One, they cannot know me. I am unborn and eternal. They can't understand me. And then another verse which is also related to the previous one that we have studied. Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjuna. Vedaham means I know. Samatitani means all the past, all the history, A to Z. Vartamanani, the present also. Bhavishyani, I know the future also. Forget about present and past, I know the future also. Bhutani, all the living beings. Means I know the past, present, future of all the living beings, A to Z. That is the power of the divine. He knows. Mam tu Vedana Kaschana. But me nobody knows. Last word says Mam tu Vedana Kaschana. Me nobody knows. I know everything, every individual, their past, present, future, everything. But me nobody knows. That is the power of the divine. He is being presented as a person who knows A to Z, all the individuals, all their history, all their future. But the individuals don't know him. He is covered. He does not reveal himself. So that is under his control. Means if he wants, he can reveal. If he wants, people can know him. But if he doesn't, he remains covered. He cannot be known by our effort. So that is the principle in Vedanta and Upanishad also, that the supreme person or the Brahman, who is the creator, he cannot be known by our own effort alone. He has to agree. He has to agree to reveal. He has to basically be graceful. There is a component of grace required. Unless we have faith, unless we approach that person with humility and we have devotion towards him and we have continuous basically process of yoga, we can't understand him. He will not reveal. So there, this principle is there in the Vedanta also, that the Upanishads also is very clear. Then then there are some questions given, some points given over here, and again some very core principles. So what this verse says is that ichha dvecha samuthena means the jivas basically they are having these two problems. They are having ichha, they are having desire to basically enjoy in this world, enjoying through mind or enjoying through body. They have this core desire, ichha, and dvesh. Dvesh means they have uh, the dvesh means basically enmity, envy, negative things. So these two things are there. They want to enjoy themselves and they have negativity. They have enmity towards other. Anybody who is basically blocking their path of enjoyment, or any factor, any reason which is blocking their path of so-called happiness, they have enmity towards that, or they have envy towards other. They have dvesh. Dvesh means something which is negative. Means having dvesh with others means uh, you have some negative relation with other, or you have some envy, some negative relationship, something negative with others. So they have two things, two problems. One is that they have ichha, they have desire to gratify themselves to the last limit. And their second problem is that they have negativity towards others. Means they have negative attitude, means they want to basically, the moment they see that there is some person who is not gratifying them, or basically their activities are not making them happy or making them unhappy, then they have enmity towards the other person. So these two things are being called as dvandva. So these two things they are basically engrossed in, and they are illusioned with because of these two things. And then sarva bhutani sammoham. So all the living beings, sarva bhutani means all the living beings. Sammoham means delusion, means they are covered with these two things: desire to enjoy and gratify themselves through body and mind, and having negative feeling towards others, envy, hatred, any other kind of negative feeling towards others, dvesh towards others. Saragi, these two main reasons are responsible for the bondage of the jivatma in this world, or this bondage in the karma chakra or the life and death cycle. So if the jiva are covered with these two things, unless they overcome the pull of these two factors, ichha, dvesh, desire and hatred, means likes and dislikes. Ichha means desire to gratify oneself. Dvesh means hatred or any kind of negative emotion towards others. These two things are very core. and because of these two factors, they are continuously associated with the matter, and they are not able to come out of it. They are not able to elevate themselves from the matter. They are not able to elevate themselves from their own mind and body. So they, because of these two pulls, they come into this material, nature again and again. Sarge yanti parantapa. They fall into the cycle of karma. They fall into the cycle of birth and death and birth and death all the time. And then the last next verse says that yesham tu antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandamoha nirmukta bhajante mam dridhavrata. That means those who are, those who act in a good way, those who act in the righteous way, those who follow the dharmic principles, they are over to overcome this pull of these two negative things, and because of which they are able to elevate themselves to the level of atma or self, and they bhajante mam dridhavrata. They recognize me as a supreme person, and they basically become devoted to me. That is what is being mentioned. So unless you become knowledgeable about the supreme person, you can't basically overcome this cycle of birth and death and all these trap of life and death that is there in this world. So few more things that I'll try to cover. So here, this is a verse from 8th chapter. No, this is from the 7th chapter, last, towards the last. So this is saying that Jara Marana Mokshaya Mam Ashritya Yatantiye. Jara means old age, Maran means death. So one, who wants to get rid of these natural process of life, birth, death. So especially this process of birth and death and old age. Nobody wants this, right? So nobody wants death and disease and old age, but it happens. It always happens. It's a rule of the nature. We have to leave the present body, go to the next body. We leave our memory. We leave our all past relations. So we have to go. We are forced by the nature. We have no choice. We are living like a tenant. This present body is our building, but we are tenant. The moment nature kicks us out, we will be out, and then nature can do whatever. Means the bodies will be burned, and all the components of the body will be gone in the nature again. So we are like a tenant. So we have to keep passing from birth and death, one body to another body. That's what it says, that those who want to get rid of this process and want to achieve eternity, there is a concept of eternity. You want to get rid of this and want to achieve ultimate stability, where you don't have to be put out by even life and death, the process of death all the time. So for that, you have to mam asritya. You have to be devoted to me. You have to be dependent upon me. You have to realize that, or at least have reverence and know that there is a supreme person, and you have to work towards the process of yoga. You have to work towards self control, focusing upon the powers, understanding and be humble towards the power of the supreme person. That is mam ashritya. Mam ashritya means dependent upon me, taking refuge in me. So in the Vedanta, there is this principle of sharanagati. That means you become devoted and dependent. You accept your dependence in the supreme person. You understand that if you have to overcome this life and death cycle, this karma chakra, and all the associated problems, then the only way is that you surrender. There is a notion of surrender, that you basically feel humble and approach that supreme person. Mam ashritya. Mentally, at least, you understand that there is a supreme person. Mam ashritya yatantiye. So if you do that, then you can understand what is Brahma. They Brahma tad vidu. That means then they can understand what is Brahma, what is the supreme, and they can understand, basically they can become knowledgeable about the true process of this world, what happens in this world, what is the principle of life and death, and what is beyond the life and death. Then they become understandable, because without that, without my grace, without my giving you the key, without my giving you the knowledge, without my removing this wheel of maya, without my pulling this illusion from your mind, you will not understand. So you have to first of all surrender. So this is the process given. This is how the definition goes. Like this is, I'm just putting the definition without any interpretation, plus minus. I'm just giving you the definition that we understand what is the principle. And then there are some more verses here. This also says that nobody knows me. Means there are numerous rishis and meditators and devas and gods also, devatas also, natural powers. There are many people. Means there are Devarshi Nam, Devarshi, Maharshi, and all kinds of gods. So there are many different people with different realizations, different powers. So forget about human beings. Even the highest rishis and sages, they also don't know me. I am their creator also. I am their energizer also. I am source of their knowledge also. But they also don't know me. So I am beyond everyone. Means I am the supreme. I am not known by even the highest people, the most realized people. Forget about normal human beings. So again, the last verse here, you see, the second verse. Yo mam ajam anadim. Ajam means not born. Anadi means again who has no beginning. Vetti Loka Maheshwaram. You should know me as the Maheshwar, the supreme lord or supreme controller, supreme proprietor of the entire world. Loka Maheshwaram. I am the big boss. You should understand that. Asamudha Samarteshu Sarva Papai Pramuchate. So that person only can overcome all these barriers of the nature and transcend the nature. So there are some incentives given. Basically, there are some motivational things given about having faith in the supreme person or God. That's what I'm trying to discuss. Uh, so there are a lot of other things. So now we are getting late. So let us close here. I will try to carry another session today on the same topic because there are a lot of interesting things that we can talk about. I have given you the introduction. How Krishna is trying to describe himself. What are the powers? What are the capabilities of the supreme person? And there are many more things. And the entire Gita is filled with a lot of verses. Here I have filtered some of them and trying to describe. And then there are more to come. And there are many very very important verses which are good to understand. At least we should have some knowledge about that. So we'll continue tomorrow. Before I end, I can take some questions if you have. Anybody has question, they can unmute themselves and ask. I hope people have not slept. It's already late night. Yeah, yeah. So same time, I'll try to keep it. I hope you are comfortable with this timing. I can keep it at 6:30 also, but somehow I find 8:30 more comfortable because otherwise, I mean, if you have problems, you tell me. Means I am okay with both. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Today I did not get time, so I prepared pretty fast. Yeah, tomorrow onwards I will put it. Yeah, yeah. I prepared the slides in a hurry, so I could not. Yeah, so here, we are trying to understand some very, very serious topics. So, from my side, I'm just putting the statements. Yeah, yeah, I understand that. So, but here my objective is to just give you a bird's eye view. Means in this topic, if I start going deeper, then the purpose of the course will be basically lost. I really don't want to go into the details of this. Just giving you a bird's eye view that okay, this is the process. And those who are more interested in this aspect, I can have more detailed lectures on this also. Means I love these topics, but it requires more time, definitely, as you mentioned. So here we are just touching upon this. What are the statements given? How God is being defined, and how our relationship with God is being defined. So here, there is a yeah, my pleasure that you are getting something positive out of this, and yeah, So this is a very interesting topic, and in fact, I had taken some verses where atheism is also described. So I could not cover it today. Tomorrow we'll cover that. So he is talking about atheism also and trying to counter it. That okay means what is the? I mean, he's describing about himself that this is God. This is the definition of God. This is our relationship with God. This is the definition of jiva. And then he's also describing, what is atheism and why it is not correct. So logically, he's also describing that. So both the things are being put towards us, and it is up to us what we conclude from there. So he has left all these conclusions to us that okay, I have told you, I've given you the message. Now you interpret. Now you assimilate it and you think about it, analyze it from different angles, then accept. So we'll continue from here, and there are a lot of interesting things that I have not covered today. Tomorrow we'll touch upon. Any other question? Thank you. Any other question? Anybody? Yeah, we can keep 6:30. We can try. I hope should be fine. Only thing is my work gets some discontinuity, but it's okay. I can do it at 6:30. Fine. So uh, okay, we'll see. So 8:30. Fine. So we will stick to 6:30. Let us see. Yeah. Any other question? I hope most of you could understand whatever things we are talking about. I am just putting the statements as they are. Many times I have not gone into the details or elaboration of those. So I'm just giving you a definition. The way he's speaking about himself, I'm just putting it. So Krishna is assuming his role as a supreme and is putting the facts about the supreme. That's what we should take it as. Now it is up to us to analyze it. So Kshitij is asking whether I can send the slides. Of course, I can send the slides, no problem. I will share whatever slides are there. Any other question? Okay, so in case we don't have any question, we can, yeah, yeah. Could you please speak louder? Yes, please. Yeah. No, Prakriti is not only body. Prakriti is everything. All the external world that we see is also Prakriti. Our body is part of Prakriti. Yeah, the Jiva is the individual self or the Atman. So in the beginning also we had discussed this verse where he says that I have two energies. One is the Bhumi, Rapo, Nalo, Vayu, Kham, Mano, Buddhir, Evacha. So we had discussed in the beginning that the first energy is the material energy or the lifeless energy, the matter, which is earth, water, ether, fire, air. This is the gross, basically classification of matter, and also the mind, intelligence, ego. So this is a subtle matter, gross and subtle energies. So these are the lifeless energies. These are basically inanimate or lifeless energies. So our body also has all these, right? So earth, ether, fire, water, air, and mind, intelligence, ego, subtle and gross energies. So these are in themselves lifeless energies. These are just tools. These are just energies. They don't have life. And likewise, in all the world, these energies are also there. All around us, we have earth, ether, water, fire, air, and in the jivas, we have this mind, intelligence, ego to different extent. But he says that this is my inferior energy or lifeless energy. My superior energy is the jivas. They are also my energy. They are also my energy is not a very accurate term. The way it is described, they are my prakriti. So we are also his prakriti, and the matter is also his prakriti. Prakriti is getting translated as energy. It's not a very correct translation, not very accurate, but the way to describe is that my prakriti. When you say that this person's nature is like this, his nature is very bad, or his nature is so good. So it is a part of him. It is basically related to him, and it is his characteristics. It is not separate from him. Likewise, when he's saying that these matter, air, water, ether, fire, this is my prakriti. So there is a link. It is not that he is separated from it. He is related to it. It is part of him. It is a part of the supreme. Likewise, is jiva or the conscious beings, the consciousness, they are not isolated from him. It is not that they are, you know, very isolated. They are very distinct and separate from him. In fact, they cannot survive without him. This their individual consciousness, individual atma or self. They are deriving their sustenance or life from the supreme person. So they are part of him. They are basically deriving their existence from the supreme person. So they are his prakriti also. So there is the higher prakriti, which is the jiva, which is the conscious living force, and then there is the inferior prakriti, which is the dead matter. And the jiva are basically trying to get engrossed in this dead matter, forgetting the Ishwar. They are basically trying to get engrossed in the dead matter and get agitated by the dead matter, my mind, intelligence, ego, and gross matter. They are just getting entangled into all this combination and forgetting their link with the supreme person. That is what is the principle. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So first thing is we have to be, first of all, we have to elevate ourselves and come to the level where at least we are able to detach ourselves from the mind and body. So all throughout we have discussed that okay, we have to elevate ourselves and become observer and controller of mind and body. And then we are actually situated at the level of self. That means if we are in a state where the mind and body does not perturb us, we become controllers of the mind and body, then we are acting like true self or the atma. We are not getting we are actually assuming the status of the true self or the atma, which is always superior to the dead matter. And then beyond that, he's saying that there is a super self who is the master energizer, the enabler of the atma also. So there he's saying that you may not be able to easily, you can't really realize that super self or the divine or the supreme Ishwar by your own effort. There this grace factor comes in. So in Gita also several places it is mentioned that only by my grace you can understand. So if you want to go one level higher and beyond your own self, you want to understand the super self, that is not possible by your own effort. You have to have the grace, you have to have the agreement of the big boss. So without that, the big boss will not reveal himself to you. Yeah, devotion, this principle of devotion, surrender, that is there. Surrender means understanding that supremacy. That okay means he is the big boss and he is all powerful. I am my capabilities are also given by him. I am completely dependent upon him, and I have to basically, if you look at the 11th chapter, which is about the Vishwarupa, the concept of Vishwarupa is also there. Very very interesting facts are given. So there also he says that give up your ego and act as act as a tool, means act as my tool, means nimitta matra bhava sabyasachi. Nimitta means become my tool. That means become or execute my agenda. Don't execute your agenda of giving pleasure to your mind and body. This mind and body will go away. You execute my agenda, whatever is because the supreme person will always have highest agenda. He wants good for everyone. He wants good for the world. So in the 11th chapter he says that you are currently getting engrossed in your own personal agenda of your own mind and body, and that is a very small and minute and very degraded agenda. That is not very important. It will go away with your body and mind. That will also go away. So he's saying that you elevate yourself from your own small personal agenda, look beyond, and then execute your duties as if you are executing my agenda, which is the real good. So if you that is the purpose of yoga, that you execute your activities, daily duties, not just for your own mental and bodily pleasures, because the body and mind sometimes it will get pleasure from outside, sometimes it will get distress from outside, and you will keep getting agitated, you will keep getting disturbed. So get out of that. You don't execute your agenda, don't get disturbed and agitated by your own small agenda. You come to the level where you act as my enabler, my sorry not my enabler, my tool, and execute my agenda. Nimitta matra, you become a nimit means become a, I would say, sadhan. Sadhan means become a, the right word for nimit would be uh, nimit means a way, basically a path or a vehicle, you can say vehicle of execution. Yeah, vehicle can be a better translation. So a tool or a vehicle, you execute my agenda, become my not vehicle, but I would say become or enable things which I want or the supreme person wants. The supreme person wants good of everyone, everything, every aspect of the world. So you operate as a selfless person executing the highest agenda, even whatever duties you perform. Keep that in mind, then you will be elevating yourself. That is the process mentioned, that is the philosophy mentioned. So in the beginning, Arjuna is worried about his own agenda, that I will, kill so many people, my relative are gone, and I will be having distress, and so many people will be killed. Whether I will lose or I will win, I don't know. My teachers, my great, teachers are on their side. I can't fight them. They are so powerful. They have trained me. How can I fight them? So he's having so many, disturbance in the mind. So he's saying that this is not your personal agenda. You are not fighting just for your insult. You are not fighting just for your personal injustice, but you are fighting for a higher cause. Because that Duryodhana, if he becomes a king tomorrow, the whole Bharat Varsha will suffer because he is on the right he's not on the right path. He doesn't know what is dharma, what is right and what is wrong. He will lead the entire nation to destruction. Therefore, the higher dharma is that the righteous people, those who are on the side of dharma, they should fight and take the control in their hand. They should destroy the evil forces which are going to destroy the nation. That is the higher objective. You should take that agenda. That should be your goal, not your own personal agenda. Don't assume here that you are fighting for your own personal revenge. That is your personal agenda. You keep in mind the higher principle. That is what is being mentioned. So the supreme person always looks at the higher, highest, principle, the best, the highest good that can happen. And therefore he's saying that, okay, you work as a tool for me. I am telling you what is right. You just follow that. Don't get engrossed in your own body and mind and look for your small personal agendas. So that 11th chapter is very important, and we'll have some discussion from there. A lot of insights are derived from that also. Any other question? Okay. So thanks a lot. It's too late already. So we'll try to do it tomorrow 6:30 p.m. itself. I'll send the link. All right. Thank you.